Hi and welcome. This is Stella Morese. Today, I want to have an exploration with you around New Year's resolutions, and I want us to do something together. I want us to skip the resolutions this year. Let's agree not to make resolutions, shall we? So, personally, I've never really been a fan of them because they've always felt shallow. It was more like wishful thinking than anything that's rooted in what would seem to truly matter, at least to me. So when I look at the content, though, of the wishful thinking, there's a pattern that emerges, and that pattern shows that people are longing for a deeper, more intimate connection to something that they value. So, for example, things like losing weight becomes code for wanting to feel good and, of course, look good in your own body. Things like joining a yoga class, that's code for reconnecting with yourself. Planning a trip to Ireland, code for craving experience and joy and aliveness. Saving more, for example, code for creating safety. So you can see that at their core, these resolutions are chasing a feeling of being rooted, embodied, and safe. So feeling at home in your own body. This, of course, is important. That's what's underneath all of this. We're looking for an unshakable sense of safety, belonging, and of course, a better quality life. We want to live a quality life, a life that belongs to us, a life that's meaningful and real. So I don't know if you know this, but possibly you would have heard that the most commonly reported regret of dying people is that they wish they'd had the courage to live a life that's true to themselves, not the life that others expected of them. The number one regret of dying people, to be true to themselves. So how much of your life are you living on your terms? For those who refuse to live by the default, here's what I have come to discover. The only way I've ever known to come close to that feeling of homecoming and being rooted in my body and present and here is through being authentic inside myself. So I know that this is a seriously overused word in the self-help space, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about authenticity as presented by, the Instagram version of it. I mean the real, messy, raw kind that dismantles the belief systems that keep me small, one conversation at a time. Because New Year's resolutions will not bring you home. They're not going to help you belong inside your skin. They promise a new you, but if you don't address the beliefs that keep you stuck, the resolutions won't stick. This is why less than 10% of people actually follow through with their New Year's resolutions, and nearly half quit by the end of January. But why? Why does this happen? So, changing the habits that drive your behaviors is really difficult if you don't change your beliefs that drive the habits. Because those beliefs about who you are, your world, and the role that you have in shaping your reality is what makes the difference. And for most of us, there's a huge gap between who we are inside our skin, that voice that we hear, the voice of truth that we hear instantaneously and then the next nanosecond dismiss. So between the truth of who we are and who we think we should be. That gap in psychology is called the self-discrepancy trap. It's so appropriately named because it's a painful space between your actual authentic self and your ideal, or what they call your ought to self. How much of you are you living in the ought to space? You get to think about that. How many ought tos have you embraced today? Aligning with your authentic self, the truth of who you are, your actual, the voice of truth liberates you. Aligning with the ought to self keeps you in line through the process of shame, which brings anxiety and all kinds of other issues, and that quiet hum of defeat. It never ends because that that gap that we're talking about erodes self-trust. And self-trust is the exact thing that you actually need in order to feel safe and strong in your own skin. Because if you don't trust your own internal cues, if you don't trust what moves through your body, you are in trouble. And you're in trouble because the only place that truth lives is in and through the body. So how do I know this? Well, of course, I know this because I lived this for years. I lived in that gap for years, and I struggled in that gap for years. More than a decade, I was addicted to drugs. More than a decade, I had all kinds of mental, psychological, which I guess is the same thing, spiritual and physical ailments that I no longer have. But at that time, I had those because I was trying to deal with my reality. So let's use smoking as an example. I was a smoker for a decade. So when I wanted to quit, and it took a long time, years, I did all the right things to willpower my way through quitting. So things like tracking my habits, going to weekly meetings, speaking with my sponsor, doing the steps, and I told people, right, like to stay accountable, I told people. But guess what happened? The habits that sustaining this behavior, so you have to think about habits as a strategy on the predictable structure of thought, because it's the how I'm doing this thing. The habit kept taking over. And every failed attempt reinforced the shame cycle that kept me stuck. This is not just me, this is true for everybody. And it's exhausting and ineffective because you cannot change your behavior, like smoking, while claiming the identity that drives it, like I am a smoker. This is more than a label. It is a belief system that drives the habit, that drives the behavior, that creates the environment that you're living in. That's what the predictable structure of thought is all about. So if you stay locked in to I am a smoker, you're going to reinforce hidden narrative. Smoking is a lifelong struggle. And because you believe that smoking is a lifelong struggle, you struggle to quit smoking. So for me, the moment that I switched to I am not a smoker, that changed my reality because it allowed me to take ownership of a different identity. And if you're looking at it from the predictable structure of thought, identity is a much higher order expression than a strategy. So if you're looking to change something that you're doing, you don't like a behavior, or you don't like a strategy that you engage in, and you're looking for why do you do the things that you do, I encourage you to consider this to consider your experience from the predictable structure of thought. It will help you see the larger context of what sustains your reality in place. So there's a different approach to becoming more real. And I encourage you to consider examining who you believe yourself to be so that you don't stay trapped inside the limitations of that identity out of your awareness. Because that's the key. It's out of your awareness. And so it's important to keep noticing how we unconsciously keep recreating the same patterns year after year. So this year, I will invite you to not be a resolution statistic. Okay? Instead of focusing on what you want to do, so like go to the gym or quit smoking or whatever it happens to be, I'm going to invite you to focus on who you are choosing to become. So instead of a resolution, I'm going to ask you to set an intention. And that intention must be to become more real, to become more you. This will not make your life sparkly and pain-free and happy because that's not how it works. Pain is a portal to your yet unclaimed truth. So pain is actually an intelligent response in the body when you know how to unpack it and decode it and receive its message and integrate its message and live from that place that's underneath the pain, that is the truth of who you are. But setting the intention to become more real will make you feel more like yourself. And of course, it will help you feel better in your own skin. It will help you identify and honor your own needs and desires and things that you want. And ultimately, it will remind you that you matter. You matter. Here's my unapologetic stance on this. Deep within you, there's a woman that's capable of profound wisdom, strength, and authenticity. That woman is constantly seeking to emerge and be integrated into how you live. Developing a relationship with her requires you give yourself permission to take up space in your life, to become, to be the truth of who you really are underneath it all. This is a process. This is not a one and done. This is a process, but it's a process that allows you to reclaim your body, to reclaim your truth, to reclaim your mind, to reclaim your life.